Right, let's have a look at some of the paper we might need for sketching. Well, the first one that probably most people are familiar with is straightforward A4 photocopier or printer paper. Easily available, and in fact, if you get junk mail through the post, you often find that the reverse is left blank. So if you just want something to practice on at no cost, well, even if you don't want the rubbish, I obviously don't want that, but even if you don't want the rubbish that's sent through the post, turn it to your advantage. So that's photocopier paper. Now the next one we look at is cartridge paper. And here we've got an A3 cartridge pad. Cartridge paper is ideal for painting and drawing, particularly for drawing. This one is quite a heavy paper. It's 100 pounds or 220 grams weight, so it's quite thick and will easily take a light wash of paint, and certainly will take pen and ink, no problem at all. This is A3 size, so it's just over 16 inches by 11, and it's gummed on one edge so that when you've peeled off your drawing, your next one is underneath, clean and ready to be worked on. If you don't want to peel your drawings off, then you can get something that's spiral bound. Or if you want something that's really durable, you can get cartridge pads with a hard cover, just as if it was a personal diary. And a lot of artists keep a personal diary. They make written notes as well as little sketches. This is not quite as thick a weight, or heavier weight. This is 150 grams. But as you can see, it's perfectly capable of taking quite dark washes and pen and ink work and so on and so forth. And it does that quite happily without buckling or cockling. And if you think, well, all right, I'd like to carry something round but I haven't got the space, well, there's one that's A6 size. It's not much bigger than sort of 7 inches by 5. Will easily fit into your pocket. Next we come on to watercolour paper. A lot of people use watercolour paper because it's got a nice texture, particularly with pencil work. Not quite as easy to use with pen work unless you're going to get a hot pressed surface, which is a very smooth watercolour, and that is great for pen and ink wash. And don't limit yourself to white. There's a tinted paper that happens to be A4 size and happens to be cream, but you can get paper now in any number of colours and tints. And actually one of the best sources I found for coloured and tinted paper and card and different textures are the specialist card shops that sell supplies for making your own greetings cards. So fellas, if you're prepared to fight your way through the multitude of females in the card shops, because it does seem to be about a 99.9% female occupation, then there's a great source for coloured card. And don't overlook the ubiquitous back of the envelope for sketching. I'll show you towards the end of the video how useful that was for me. And here's an idea just to finish off. This is lining paper that I use very often in art classes and demos where I'm using sketching and felt pens and watercolour and what have you. It's very economical. It's the stuff that you buy to stick on walls to try and smooth out some of the bumps and imperfections in the walls. Here you can see I've been using a felt pen to describe basic shapes, and here I've drawn a little Australian friend, or the outline of an Australian friend, just using the basic shapes. Now the good thing about this paper as well as it being economical, is that you can easily use it on both sides. And here's a sketch I did as a demo with some watercolour added of a young gentleman you might recognise off the television. You can leave it on the roll, or you can cut sheets out to suit the size that you're working on and save your best cartridge paper or your decent watercolour paper for your best work. And I know in many parts of the world people say to me, paper has to be imported and it's quite expensive and we can't afford to practice on decent paper. Well, I hope that has offered you at least one or two suggestions as to way in which you can minimise the cost, but at the same time practice what you enjoy doing. I've drawn this little chart here which goes from 8H, which is the hardest pencil or the hardest graphite, and down 7654 and so on to the H ranges, but I wouldn't recommend any of the H ranges really for drawing because they're a bit too hard and scratchy. Fine if you're in an architect's department and you're drawing on plans, but not ideal if you're going out into the country sketching. When you get to the HB, which is roughly the midpoint of the range of pencils, that's fine. It gives you a nice solid grey, and you can get HB pencils anywhere. If you move up to the 2B, you can see it's a bit darker, and then the 5B a bit darker still, and finally got almost a jet black, which is the 8B. I'll put these side by side so you can see how bit by bit they get darker and stronger. Right, let's have a quick look now at keeping your drawings neat and clean and tidy. And by that, I mean keeping the paper clean and tidy that you're going to be drawing on, and that means that whenever you're drawing and sketching, particularly with the darker B pencils, put a piece of paper under your work where your hand is going to be. If I was going to do some work here, for example, the ball of my hand would naturally fall on this here, pick up the graphite and deposit it on the paper below. Just to prove the point, I'll rub my hand on that 8B graphite, and then I'll rub my hand on, you can see there the way it's come off on my hand, and you can see what happens. Now that would otherwise go on your paper here. Right, the other way we keep our drawings clean and tidy is by maintaining a nice sharp point in our pencils, so we get a nice crisp outline. Now we've all seen the traditional pencil, which has got a nice even looking grade through to the point, and we all know what this looks like, a simple pencil sharpener. But the only problem with that, and it does keep the pencils sharp, the point sharp, the only problem is this: you can't get anything other than the very edge of the graphite to use to draw, little more than a point. If however you use a knife, a sharp craft knife or a pen knife, you can create a much longer exposed area of graphite which you can turn to your advantage. But what I've done also is to take a piece of, in this case it's wet and dry, but a piece of emery paper or an emery board or something similar, and by rubbing the pencil point on it at an angle, either side to side or end to end, let's get that out of the way, you can get, I hope you can see this, a very nice chiseled edge to the point of the pencil, and something that you can really make work for you when you're coming to do your drawings. So for example, you can use it to do a very fine single line, and then just by turning it round and holding it a different way, instantly you've got a really characterful, lovely drawing instrument.